Okay, so we're going to look at a new type of chord today, is a bar chord. Now you might have heard about these, you might have seen them, you might have tried to play them, but we're just going to kind of explain how to use them and why you would want to use them.
Yeah, so a bar chord is a really good way of finding some of those more obscure chords. It's also a really good way of finding out a chord for yourself without having to go away and look it up.
Yeah.
You can use bar chords as a good way of working out a way to play a chord.
Yeah, so the main thing that we need to worry about is how do you do a bar chord, and it's all to do with your first finger barring across the frets.
Absolutely. Now you might have come across a capo, seen people using capos. They're basically sort of a piece of material,
Cheaters,
usually a bit of plastic or a bit of metal or something, that kind of clamps across the neck of the ukulele or the guitar or whatever. And what that does is it basically stops the strings. It basically moves that nut part up to whatever fret you're on.
Yeah, which means you can just do your same C, F, G shapes that you've already known.
Absolutely.
Without any
and that's just all moved up slightly. Now, a bar chord is slightly better, I would say, than that.
Yeah.
Because it's basically a movable capo. Once you're doing it with your own finger, you can then move that around as much as you like during the song.
But just be aware, just before anyone gets in the comments section, but capos are great and they can be used really creatively, because what they do is they give you open strings that wouldn't normally be there. So we're not banging on capos at all. Capos are great before you get down there.
Good point. Okay, so what we're going to do with the bar chord, we're going to take our index finger and we're going to press it across all 4 strings. Now you want to try and distribute that pressure as evenly as you can, which is the tricky bit. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to press that finger against the strings. Now I usually roll mine back slightly, so it's
rolling back is good.
Slightly on the side. I find you get a bit more of the bone there. It kind of helps
more bone.
a little bit more pressure rather than the kind of softer part of your finger.
Yeah, and then I have a pro tip. My pro tip is this. So when we learn, certainly when we play guitar, the first bar chord you learn is F, which is a terrible bar chord to learn because it's like the hardest one to play. I think it's like a trial. If you get through F, you can carry on playing a guitar. Otherwise, you would never want it to you didn't want it bad enough. So anyway, we do F as the first bar chord on a guitar. But what we always say is push really hard, just push, it'll be brilliant. But the pro tip is actually what you want to do, roll your finger back slightly, but then you want to bring your arm back so that what you're doing is pulling the instrument, in this case ukulele, into your fingers. And that makes it much easier to do a bar, and it doesn't give you this crazy cramp.
The other thing I tend to find when I first learned to do bar chords, certainly, was that if I tried to do a whole song that was full of bar chords, my wrist by the end really tight and really uncomfortable. The more you do it, the more you get used to that, the more you tend to relax as you play. So it does go away, it does help. Best thing to do is don't do too many bar chords at once to start with, especially if you're tending to find that that's giving you that kind of tension.
So, and my second pro tip is to do with your first finger. So there's my first finger, isn't it wonderful? They all have knuckles on them. So we can see the knuckles, the groove underneath. If that knuckle is on a string, that string is not going to, it can sound, but it's going to be harder to make it sound. So what you're going to need to do is position that so that the knuckles don't rest on any of the strings.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can always check that just by sounding. He says suddenly finding that he's sounding exactly
that.
Yeah, there we go. So can you hear that? That is now sounding really clearly, so I'm not using one of those knuckles in the way. Cool. Okay, should we learn a bar chord?
Let's do a bar chord.
Let's do B flat. So this is B flat major. Okay, which is... Oh, I see what you did there. This is a B flat major. Now, B flat major is one of the ones that's likely to come up quite often. It's a fairly common chord. It's just a bit harder to find on the ukulele. There's not really a way of doing it with open strings in there. So we're going to have to bar. So what we're going to do is we're going to take an A, which is there, and we're going to move that A up one step, which if you did that on a keyboard would be going from A to the next black note above it, which is a B flat. And actually this works all the way up the keyboard. So if I start on one note on a keyboard and then go to the black note and then go to the white note and then go to the black note and then go to the white note, that is one fret each time. Be aware on a piano keyboard there are 2 places where there isn't a black note. Between the notes B and C and the notes E and F, there isn't a black note, so you wouldn't do that. If you were then going up one fret there, that would be taking you from a white note to a white note.
So, just to clarify, if you're on a B, you've worked out where your B is, you only then need to move 1 fret up to play a C note.
Absolutely, and the same at E. 1 fret up will take you to F. Anywhere else, it will take you from the white note to the black note above it by going up 1 fret. Okay, so we've got our A, we're going to move it up 1 fret. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bar across the neck of the ukulele like that, and then I'm going to take my fingers, I'm going to put my next finger on the 2nd fret of the C string. That's effectively the 1st fret now because I've barred it. but we're still going to think of it as the 2nd fret. Put my finger on the 2nd fret of the C string, and then my 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the G string. And that is my A shape moved up 1 fret and then barred. And what that will do now is play me a rather lovely B flat
chord. Yes, fantastic. So just to really, I don't want to do this theory, but the tiny little bit of theory. There is a thing called enharmonic equivalence. But what that basically means is B flat is the same as A sharp.
Yeah, all of the black notes on a piano have got 2 names. They're either a flat or a sharp, depending on which note, whether you've gone up to them or down to them. Just always look at the notes either side.
Yeah.
And it's going to be either the flat of the one above it or the sharp of the one below it.
And obviously you'll be looking and seeing a chord and trying to work it out. So if you do a chord and you're like, oh, I need an A sharp, then it's going to be an A sharp.
We normally call that one B flat major.
Yeah, of
we
course
normally call it A sharp major. So that's our B flat major. Obviously, we can now move that up even further. So if I take that up 1 further, that then becomes a B.
Yeah.
So my A becomes a B flat, becomes a B.
Now
and
only 1 fret.
That gap, B to C, so that then becomes a C. And that's another way of playing a C. C sharp, we can keep going up that neck. And we can do that with different shapes, so we can do that with an F. Same thing, if I take my basic F major chord, 1st fret of the E string, 2nd fret of the G string, and if I just take that chord and same thing, bar it up, I can do it with an A minor, so I take my A minor, just 3rd fret of the G string, and then
slide that one up as well.
You can even do it with a C, just take your basic C major there. I tend to do it with my little finger for this, just because it gives me a bit more space, and then, oh, no that's not. Same thing, just work our way up by barring it.
Barre chords.